There is a very specific kind of betrayal that your own body commits against you, and it always seems to happen at the worst possible moment. You're sitting in a dark movie theater, or you're standing at a wedding, or you're just looking down at a message on your phone, and you feel it begin. First, the lump rises in your throat. Then a hot sting builds behind your eyes. The world goes blurry. And then, completely against your will, warm, salty water spills over and runs down your face. You try to stop it, you try to hold it together, and your face does that helpless, crumpling thing anyway. We call this crying, and we treat it as one of the most ordinary experiences in the world. But I want you to stop for a second and look at it the way an alien visiting Earth would. Picture trying to explain this to a creature that had never seen it. You'd have to say, when a human is overwhelmed by an invisible feeling, not an injury, not physical pain, just an emotion, water leaks out of its eyes and its face gets wet and puffy. And the alien would rightly stare at you and ask, why on earth would a body do that? Because here is the truly staggering fact that we almost never stop to appreciate. Out of every single animal species on this entire planet, you belong to the only one that does this. Dogs whimper, cats yowl, apes scream and wail, but not one other animal on Earth sheds tears because of how it feels. Crying real, emotional tears is a power that belongs to exactly one species in the known universe, and that species is you. So why? Why would evolution build something this strange, this seemingly useless, this downright embarrassing, and then hand it to every single human being who has ever lived? This is the story of the weirdest thing your body does, and the genuinely beautiful reason it exists. Now, I can already hear the objection forming in your head, because it's the obvious one. You're thinking, hang on, that's not true. Animals cry all the time. I've seen my dog look heartbroken when I leave the house. I've seen videos of elephants weeping over their dead. I've watched a sad-eyed cat that looked like it was about to burst into tears. It's a completely fair objection, and the answer to it is where this whole mystery cracks wide open. Because to understand why human crying is unique, you first have to understand that there isn't just one kind of tear. There are three. Let's walk through them, because the third one changes everything. The first type is called basal tears. These are the quiet, constant, invisible tears that bathe your eyes every second of every day, keeping them moist, smooth, and clean. You never notice them, but without them, your eyes would dry out and you'd go blind. Every animal with eyes has these. The second type is reflex tears. These are the ones that flood your eyes when you chop an onion, when a gust of wind throws grit at your face, or when something pokes you in the eye. They're an automatic emergency wash, a built-in windshield wiper to flush out anything harmful. Animals have these too. A dog's eyes water in the wind. A horse's eyes flush out dust. Perfectly normal. Then there is the third type, emotional tears. Tears produced not by an onion, not by the wind, not by an injury, but purely by a feeling. Tears that come from grief, from joy, from awe, from overwhelming love. And that third kind, the tears of emotion, belongs to exactly one creature on the planet. You. This is the part that surprises people the most. Animals are not missing the equipment. A dog has tear glands. A cat has tear glands. An elephant has enormous tear glands. They are all perfectly, physically capable of producing tears, and they do, for lubrication and irritation. They simply never, ever produce them in response to an emotion. Your dog that looks so sad when you grab your keys is genuinely feeling something, but the wetness you might project onto its eyes is not emotional crying. We are reading our own most human trait into a face that cannot do what we do. The sorrowful animal shedding tears of grief is, as far as science can tell, something that exists only in our imagination and our storybooks. There's a charming little piece of evidence for this hidden inside your own language. Have you ever heard the phrase crocodile tears used to describe someone faking sadness? It comes from the very real fact that crocodiles do produce tears, often while they're eating. For centuries, people saw this and imagined the beast was weeping with fake sorrow over its prey. But the crocodile isn't sad. The tears are just biology, possibly from the way it huffs air while its jaws work. And so even our oldest expressions quietly admit the truth. When an animal sheds tears, we instinctively know it isn't really crying. Real crying, the kind that pours out of a genuine, overwhelming feeling, was always ours alone. So if emotional tears really are their own separate, unique thing, you'd expect them to actually be different, physically, from the tears that an onion produces. And here is where the detective story gets genuinely strange, because they are. In a now famous series of studies, a biochemist named William Frey did something a little odd. He collected people's tears. He gathered emotional tears from people watching sad films, and he gathered reflex tears from people standing over freshly cut onions. And then he analyzed and compared their actual chemical makeup. And the two were not the same. The emotional tears contained about 21% more protein. They carried extra prolactin, extra stress hormones like ACTH, and most astonishingly of all, they contained leucine and kephalin, a natural painkiller your own body produces that works in a way similar to morphine. Read that again because it's remarkable. Your emotional tears literally contain a homemade painkiller. When you cry from genuine pain or grief, you may quite literally be flushing built-up stress chemicals out of your body while simultaneously releasing soothing, opioid-like compounds that calm you down. This is the hard biological reason behind something you felt your entire life, that strange, heavy, washed-out sense of relief after a really good cry. Your stress hormone levels drop. Your nervous system shifts gears toward calm. People have always said crying makes you feel better, and it turns out they were describing real chemistry. A good cry is, in a very literal sense, your body medicating itself. But this still leaves the biggest question of all hanging in the air. Even if crying calms you down, why would evolution choose tears as the way to do it? Why leak salty water out of your eyes specifically? And the leading answer is so elegant it might change how you feel about crying forever. Tears are a signal. They are a silent, visible, unfakeable cry for help. Think carefully about what tears actually do to you in the moment. They blur your vision. They make your face puffy and weak. They physically lower your defenses and broadcast that you are not okay. In a harsh, dangerous world, that is the very last thing you would ever want to advertise, unless the entire point of it was to be seen. Unless tears evolved precisely to tell the people around you, without a single word, I am overwhelmed, I am hurting, I need you. And here is the genius of it. Real emotional tears are almost impossible to fake on command. Try to force genuine tears right now, and you'll find you can't just summon them. That difficulty is exactly what makes them trustworthy. When your brain sees real tears spilling down someone's face, it knows the signal is honest, and it responds. The research on this is striking. When people are shown a face with visible tears versus the exact same face without them, they instantly judge the tearful face as more in need of help, more deserving of comfort, and they become far more willing to step in and support that person. And astonishingly, this works even when you strip away the sad situation entirely. The tears themselves, on their own, flip a switch in the observer's brain that says, this person needs care. Picture a person standing silently at a funeral, saying nothing, just tears streaming down a still face. And without a single word being spoken, people move toward them, arms open, to hold them. That is tears doing their ancient job. That is a wordless message landing perfectly. So where did this strange signal come from? The most compelling theory traces it all the way back to the very first sound you ever made, the cry of a baby. A newborn human is utterly helpless. It cannot speak, cannot walk, cannot fight, cannot flee. It has exactly one tool to keep itself alive, one desperate signal to summon a caregiver across the dark, and that signal is crying. Many scientists believe that adult emotional tears grew out of that primal infant distress call. Crying is, at its root, the oldest message our species has, a way to say I need you when you have no other way to say it. As we grew up and grew quieter, the desperate wail of the infant may have softened into the silent, dignified tears of the adult, but the meaning underneath never changed. It still says, come closer, I cannot do this alone. Here's a tiny detail that makes this connection even more haunting. A newborn human, in its very first weeks of life, cries without any tears at all. The wailing is there from the very first breath, but the actual tears don't arrive until a few weeks, sometimes months later, once the tear glands fully switch on. So the sound of crying comes first, and the water comes after. It's almost as if evolution built the desperate distress call long ago, and only much later added the silent, visible flood of tears on top of it, a second, quieter signal layered over the ancient scream. We are, in a sense, the only animal that upgraded its cry for help into something you could read from across a perfectly silent room. And tears don't just call for help, they actively rewire the people around you. Seeing someone cry fires up the empathy circuits in the watcher's brain almost instantly. The simple act of crying releases bonding chemicals like oxytocin and endorphins, the very same molecules that knit human beings together. Crying with another person, or for another person, can forge a connection that words could never reach. Tears are, quite literally, a kind of social glue. You can watch this signal at work from the very first day of a human life. Place a single crying newborn in a hospital nursery full of other babies, and within moments something remarkable happens. The others begin to cry too, one after another, a chain reaction of tiny wails spreading across the room. Newborns are wired to catch one another's distress before they understand a single thing about the world. And that contagion never fully leaves us. It's why your own throat tightens when you watch a stranger break down on a screen. Why a single person quietly weeping at a funeral can set off an entire room. We are built, from our very first day on Earth, to feel each other's tears almost as if they were our own. There's an even stranger discovery that drives this home. In a recent study, researchers had men simply smell women's emotional tears, with no idea what they were sniffing, no scent they could even consciously detect. And the result was extraordinary. Exposure to those tears reduced aggression in the men by more than 40%. The tears carried an invisible chemical signal that quietly turned down hostility, the same kind of effect seen in certain animals. So tears don't only beg for help, they actively disarm the threat in front of you. They are, in the deepest sense, a peacemaker leaking out of your own eyes. Which finally explains the mystery we started with: why animals don't cry. It's not that they don't feel, of course they feel. They have plenty of distress signals of their own, the whimper of a puppy, the bleat of a lost lamb, the scream of a frightened monkey. But notice what every single one of those has in common: they are loud. And loud, in a world full of sharp-eared predators, is dangerous. A loud cry can get you killed. So consider what we did instead. Humans, the most intensely social creatures this planet has ever produced, evolved a way to scream for help without making a single sound. A silent, intimate visual distress call, meant only for those close enough to look into your face and see it. We replaced the dangerous public alarm with a private, trusting whisper between people who care about each other. When you really think about it, that is one of the most human solutions imaginable. And in case you think this is just a gap between us and distant creatures like dogs or deer, consider our closest living relatives. Chimpanzees share around 98% of our DNA. They laugh when they're tickled, they grieve over their dead, they throw tantrums, they hold grudges, they reconcile after fights. In so many ways their inner lives mirror our own, and yet even they do not weep. Not a single one of our primate cousins sheds emotional tears. Somewhere after our family tree split away from theirs, in the few million years that quietly shaped us into humans, this one strange ability appeared in us and in us alone. Whatever crying is truly for, it arrived hand in hand with the very things that make us most human of all. And here is the final twist, the thing that makes crying stranger and more wonderful than any of this so far. We don't only cry when we're sad. We cry at weddings. We cry at the airport during reunions. We cry watching a child take their first wobbling steps. We cry from overwhelming beauty, from a piece of music, from a sunset, from pride, from relief, from joy so big it physically hurts. Tears, it turns out, are not really the signal of one specific emotion at all. They are the body's release valve for any feeling that grows too enormous to hold inside. Whether it's the deepest grief or the highest joy, crying is what happens when a human being is simply too full of emotion to contain it for one more second. It is the overflow of a heart that has reached its limit. And think for a moment about how universal those overflow moments are. It doesn't matter where on earth a person was born, what language they speak, or what century they lived in. A mother reunited with a child she feared was lost will cry. A soldier stepping off a plane into the arms of his family will cry. A person hearing that they've finally been forgiven, or that they're going to be okay after all, will cry. Across every single culture that has ever existed, the same small handful of overwhelming human moments, deep loss, sudden reunion, flooding relief, unbearable beauty, pull the exact same response out of us. That kind of perfect universality does not happen by accident. It is the unmistakable fingerprint of something woven into us long, long ago. Something ancestral and shared by every human who has ever lived. And there's one last kind of crying that proves this overflow idea perfectly, because you have absolutely felt it. Sometimes you laugh so hard, at a joke, at a friend, at something gloriously, helplessly stupid, that you start to cry. Tears come streaming down your face in the middle of pure joy, and you couldn't stop them if your life depended on it. Stop and notice how strange that is. The very same salty water that pours out of you in your darkest grief also pours out in your brightest, most uncontrollable laughter. It is the clearest possible proof that tears were never really about sadness at all. They are about intensity, about a feeling grown so strong that it spills right over the edges of you. Grief and joy, at their absolute peaks, turn out to pull the very same lever. Your body, it seems, has only one way to say, "I am completely, utterly full," and it says it through your eyes. So let's go back to that betrayal we started with. That hot, blurry, embarrassing leak that ambushes you in the movie theater, at the wedding, over the text you weren't ready for? You have probably spent a good portion of your life a little ashamed of it, trying to blink it back, apologizing for it, calling it weakness, calling it being too sensitive, wishing your body wouldn't do this to you in front of other people. But look at what it truly is now. It is the single most honest signal your body is capable of producing. It is an ancient call, older than language itself, that says without a single word, I am not okay, please come closer. Or sometimes, this is so beautiful that I cannot hold it in. It is the reason a total stranger will cross a room to comfort you. It is the reason your hardest moments were never meant to be carried alone. And no other creature in the entire animal kingdom has it. Of all the extraordinary things that set our species apart, the language, the fire, the tools, the cities, this might quietly be the most beautiful one of all. We are the only animal that can weep. And in weeping, we do something no other living thing can do. We silently ask one another to come closer, to help, to stay. So the next time your eyes betray you, in a dark theater, or at a wedding, or in the middle of an ordinary afternoon, don't fight it. Don't apologize for it. That blur in your vision is not weakness pouring out of you. It is the most human thing you will ever do. We are the only animal on Earth that cries, and maybe, just maybe, that's because we are the only animal on Earth that needs each other this much. So go ahead and let it fall. Somewhere out there, someone is waiting to see it, and to come closer. Because that single shining tear running down your face is the oldest love letter our species ever wrote, sent without ink and without words, from one fragile human heart straight to another. And in the end, that may be the truest thing we have ever learned how to do.